Okay.
Are you ready? Hey everyone, welcome back to the attic. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Turi, and today we're talking about resin, specifically about how 5 Minute Crafts is showing people how to use resin.
For those of you that know this channel, you know we use resins a lot, but you may have also noticed that I'm usually the one that's using the resin. Today I'm using Turi as a test dummy to exploit his resin and experience to try some of these out. Now personally, I usually skip past 5-minute craft videos because they're a vortex that suck me in for hours, but the other day I was scrolling through and I saw this title, 29 Cool Resin Crafts to Make in a Minute. And to say I had my doubts was an understatement.
So today we're going to go through each of these crafts and I will make them as directed. If they work, great. If they don't, we're going to improve them.
So let's get started. Let's take a look at some of them. Now I've seen these because I picked them out. Turi hasn't necessarily seen these unless you've randomly come across them online.
I don't know.
So I'm going to show him a couple of these, we're going to walk through them, and then we're going to give them a try. This is from 29 Cool Resin Crafts to Make in a Minute. And this video has just under 500,000 views and it was published in August. And this one uses ramen noodles.
Oh, great.
Oh, great. So they take out the noodles and they pour just resin. They don't say what kind.
Straight into it.
Straight onto it, no board to hold it on.
It's UV. Okay.
Yeah.
So now they made a...
So that's it. That's it.
They've made a composite material out of ramen noodles and UV resin, which is interesting.
UV resin isn't magic. If UV light can't get to it, then it's not gonna cure. I have very little faith that this would work well, but we're gonna try it with UV resin. I have more faith that if you did this within a pressure pot, or not even a pressure pot, I have more faith that if you just did this on the counter, normal 2-part epoxy resin, this would come out exactly the way you want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta just try it exactly as they're showing first.
Right.
Let's do that, and then we'll talk about how to make it better.
That. Okay.
You made a mess.
That's how ramen noodles work. So what am I pouring on it?
UV resin. Random nonsense off of Amazon. If you look up UV resin, this is what you find.
Amazon special.
This is so dumb.
So I think we would have to pretty much use that entire bottle because it's immediately sinking in. I mean, how is it not just gonna get to the bottom? It's gonna sink through.
So it all sunk down.
Let's just cure what we've got.
I've never had ramen once.
What?
Yeah, that's why I'm interested in what it tastes like.
Oh my God, we're gonna have some ramen. So I can already feel that there's tons of uncured on the base.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, it's stuck.
Oh, look at that.
So maybe if we cure this side now.
Look at how much wasted there is.
Of course. Even though we cured the other side for a while, there's more uncured. This is basically a UV resin sponge. So this isn't fully cured. I'm just gonna break it in half. Oh boy, okay. Yeah, uncured resin just hanging out in the center.
So would you say that this worked?
I think it would go under catastrophic failure.
Okay, let's get a garbage. Now we're gonna try this again, but we're gonna do it right.
Okay.
Or at least a way that if I were to do this, we would do it this way. So here's a new package of noodles that is just a square. And we're gonna put the noodles in that. Okay, but open the bag.
So instead of using the entire thickness of it, we're gonna try and split that.
Hey, perfect.
Now it should sit pretty flat. That looks nice.
We're gonna use some 2-part resin.
Tell me about when.
Keep going. Every time I do resin, I go from one cup to the other because you're just collecting everything.
Too much of a mess.
Well, that's why we're doing this, because resin is very messy and they don't make it seem like it's that messy of a craft.
Hopefully that'll work.
That will turn out better regardless.
Oh wow, this thing's funny.
Well, it's noodles.
Came out pretty good.
And this side is exposed, but it is completely resin covered.
This is great. This is funny.
This is the way ramen noodles was meant to be resin casted.
Yep. So, this came out pretty good.
I like this. I'll probably actually keep this around the house because it's hilarious.
It's really weird. I don't know why it exists, but it's technically usable compared to not at all. If you're interested in making something more like this than the other one, all you need is 2-part resin and then the silicone form that we had, which is really simple and doesn't cost too much. The one thing that we did to really make sure that this was going to work better was using a pressure pot, because we knew that would really eliminate all the bubbles. That'll definitely be the thing you'll be worrying about if you don't use one, but you would get something that would still be functional compared to a brick of uncured UV and noodles. So this worked out a lot better.
Okay, this one is from 25 resin crafts that will definitely leave you inspired. And this has 19 million views on it. They take a little coaster around, a little wooden coaster, make some lines on it, cut it with a knife, really shallowly cut it with a knife.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and perfectly crack it on those lines.
Nice.
Use some duct tape.
Oh, okay. I can guess what they're doing. Yeah.
It looks like they're making a mold. I don't know why you would ever use duct tape for this. There's many other proper
It's only
tapes
got to
used.
take it 5 minutes, so like,
Yeah, but
as
there's
fast as you can find duct tape.
so, and then they're putting just a green resin in. They haven't said what kind of it is yet. Big old bubbles in the center. Let dry. So it's a 2-part. Look at all those bubbles in there.
Right.
It's a 2-part epoxy, which means that they had to let that cure overnight. First thing that stands out to me with this one is that they used real wood and they didn't seal it. And that's very evident when we look at the final product and it's full of bubbles. The second thing I noticed right away is that they used duct tape. I don't know how you're gonna cut that perfectly with a craft knife. That's what I'm most excited to see you do. Because they showed it be scored once and then it just snapped perfectly like that.
Maybe some editing will fix that for me.
Nope. You have to do it exactly as it's shown. Wooden coaster. You see here, draw?
Oh, look at the big knife they've got. You got me a dinky knife. I need a bigger one.
Okay, let's get you an
Hey
adult
man, you were
knife.
trying to make me do this.
Just don't cut your fingers open.
That's the whole dangerous part of this. I think this woman's the Hulk. Okay, so there's one. Did cut myself a bit.
Did you really? Oh my God, Terry!
Yeah, see, it's really dangerous.
You're bleeding.
Clearly. So that's what that looks like.
Like poop.
We don't know what resin they're using, so the quality of the stuff we have arguably better. Where's the syringe?
Are you okay with the pipette?
So we're being cheap and using a pipette. Okay, I think we're pretty much on. I'm just gonna put the whole mat over here. So here's the wooden coaster, and from a quick inspection, it looks like it worked out pretty well, but the problem here is the duct tape.
It leaked everywhere.
Resin really wants to escape. It's definitely kind of cool. It's not as clean as the one that they showed because we did get leak outs. We have less bubbles than they showed.
Yeah. We have almost no bubbles in comparison.
Oh, wow.
And what's more interesting is how little We filled it up all the way to the top, and how much there's missing inside because it all leaked out. For this next one that we do, I think we should put tape around it properly, cover the top in resin as well.
Oh.
This one's much thicker than the other one.
Right.
This is just to be a bottom. Okay, now you're gonna put tuck tape on that board. So what's tuck tape, Terry?
I don't know what it's actually used for, but we use it to stop resin from going places we don't want it to. And it's got a really smooth sheen on one side. Resin doesn't really want to stick to this material. There's the base.
Then we're gonna use our hot snot.
What now?
Hot glue?
Yeah.
Just a little bit of glue. Oh, we need to get tuck tape on the edges here.
Okay. I'm going to be using the Amazon Special UV resin and just a chip brush to do a seal coat, putting a nice thin layer over everything and then hitting it with the UV lamp for a little bit because we're not using much. So now I'm just going to be putting a thin layer on the inside and trying to work it around that bottom edge. So it won't take a whole lot. So I'm just removing this from its form. We got a little bit of resin spill out on one side. Luckily it wasn't able to spill out so much as to really lower the level to where it's unusable, like the last one. So here's the 5 Minute Crafts version, and here's ours.
I really like the way this one turned out.
Yeah, that one came out really nice.
And it's honestly just a few extra steps to get from this to this.
If you're really going in to try to do something like this, you might as well do the extra seal coat, and then if you can, but we found isn't actually necessary, a pressure pot can help.
Okay, in that same video, this is one of my least favorite ones. This is taking your perfectly usable kitchen cabinet knob and making it into something else. So we're taking off our kitchen knob because it broke. Putting a screw in some thing.
UV resin in silicone cupcake.
Yep, putting more UV resin in it. And there you go. You have a big chunk of UV resin that is now your knob that looks like a cupcake. The one thing I have an issue with is how thick it is. Even with clear UV resin, thickness is an issue. So I'm interested to see how that turns out. Like if I were to do this personally for our house, I would find a smaller mold, put a screw in that, and then do this. Because I think that this is kind of a fun little craft, but I don't like the fact that there's a cupcake mold around it.
It's really big.
It's really big.
Yeah.
I do think it will work with UV resin, but we need to try it out. The thing that I'm a little concerned about is how thick it is. I feel like we're gonna get a lot of bubbles, especially because they do have mica flakes in here.
This is more of an aesthetic issue.
Yeah, this is more me not liking it. We're gonna do the doorknob. You got your bolt. Let's do blue flakes like they had.
Well, let's just see what happens with a minute cure. There's a bit of flex there and bubbles coming up from underneath. They could say that they edited down the curing times because of them trying to make quick videos.
Okay.
So I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt of fully curing this stuff. All right.
Cure it for
I'm
another
gonna do
minute.
it another 2 minutes. Yeah, that's
Deformed quite a bit.
deformed a bit, very warm, and still not fully cured.
Well, let's do the next layer.
Yeah, so here's our decorations. Probably good. Oh, they're well dispersed. They definitely weren't conservative on the amount of resin they used, so I worry that I actually am. I'll look at the cross section. Ah, yikes. Okay.
What happened?
No, this is what it looks like. I am gonna set it like this. Hit it with some light. There's a lot of deformation.
This isn't even as thick as the one that they have in the video. Would you recommend putting this on your kitchen cabinet?
That's up to you aesthetically. Would you want this thing facing you?
You know, when we were watching this, I didn't even think about the screw head being right in the middle.
I didn't until I just watched it and we had it sitting there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did not use the same one. Technically, it works. Aesthetically, I wouldn't have it in my home. So I guess that's up to you guys. So what we figured out to make this guy a bit better is using a Solo Cup ripoff to then create an actual form for this so that it won't deform. And we're gonna use some UV resin on the end of the bolt so that way we can hide what this is. So it's not as blatantly obvious that there is a metal bolt inside of this thing. So I'm gonna cut like right above. So we wanna hide that this is a bolt, and the way we're going to do that, some UV. So I've got a small amount of UV on here, and I'm just going to cover it like that.
And then cure it real fast.
Boink. This doesn't have to be done with UV resin. You could use pretty much any type of adhesive, but UV is really good with this kind of stuff.
I mean, obviously the bolt can't be completely hidden.
No, but we're trying our best to do it.
This thing is so ugly. I'm like impressed by how ugly it is.
The problem is the one that we make to be good isn't gonna look, it's gonna look marginally better, but the just main design of it is bad, so I don't know. Now, the other main thing to do here is to not let this actually sit on the bottom. We want to raise this up a little bit.
So much snot.
So yeah, it's a little bit, I'm not putting much because it's going to take off. So the two part is all mixed up.
They're just called glitter flakes.
Mixing up these frosted flakes.
Nice and chunky.
Mm-hmm. As long as we cover our bolt.
Which we will.
Yeah, we will.
Safely move that out of the way.
Yeah, oh, that's not so bad.
Okay.
So here's our new drawer pull, and I can already tell that it looks far nicer, and it's not even out of the form yet. So let's get it out of there and take a closer look.
That looks so much nicer. Here is the 5-minute craft version.
So we had our bolt easily seen, some very obvious bubbling, and the shape of it is very irregular. The one we made, most of your flakes are actually at the bottom, which in this case is better because that's what you're looking at when you're about to open this. We weren't able to completely make the bolt non-visible, but it is much more hidden and not as obvious. Because we used two-part, we could make it much thicker than what we did with UV resin. I believe this one looks a lot better, and just true to form to their video is actually the correct thickness.
Okay, so we did 3 of the Resin Crafts at 5-minute crafts shows off to people online. Of these 3, are there any that you like?
The one that I find the most functional and the one we're actually probably going to use is the coaster.
I like the ramen one though. Like, as dumb as it was going into it, I think it's hilarious.
Oh, it's the funniest one for sure. It looks super weird, and now this is going to be, like, we're not getting rid of it. It's really bizarre.
As somebody that is newer to resin, doesn't use it very often, what was the most challenging thing about the 5-minute crafts tutorials?
For someone that is completely a novice to resin, I think knowing what even they're using is the hardest, because they don't say anything of what type of resin. We're familiar with at least the difference between a two-part and a UV, in that the UV ones are obviously using a light. That's why we were able to figure out what they were using. Now, there are differences between UV resins, so we don't know exactly which one they're using. We just know the family that it is. Just like with this coaster, we don't know what 2-part resin they were using. We have an idea on which type of resin would work well for this, and we have it on hand, so that's why we were able to get actually pretty good results. Now, someone just going into it, and like you were kind of saying, if you just Google resin, there's so many different types, it's going to be kind of hard to determine what you're looking for. I think that would be the hardest thing for someone getting in to kind of source what they would need from those videos. Ramen noodles made 0 sense in the way that they were doing it. That was very bizarre.
Yeah, we can't even have the 5-minute craft version because we had to throw it out.
Right away into the trash because it was full of uncured UV resin. Because of course it is. It's a sponge basically full of resin. Like, there's no way to get away from that other than what we did, which was just to put a form around it and pour it up.
Yeah.
The doorknobs are, I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I don't get.
I don't get it either. The thing that just struck me the most about these is how much UV resin they wanted to cure in 2 go-arounds.
Yeah.
I think a point that is important to bring up is that resin crafts are expensive. Don't let the title of these videos fool you. Resin is not a cheap hobby. This bottle alone was $50. Resin is not cheap. And this is the stuff that they were just soaking the ramen in. So if you're going to do resin crafts, you want to do them right. You want to do your research ahead of time, and you want to make sure you know the products you're using before you throw them into noodles. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our patrons. I especially want to thank our super fans. It's because of you guys that we're able to do the weird stuff that we do here, and especially take the time to review some 5-minute craft videos. This was a bit of a departure from what we normally do, but it was a fun experience for both of us to get together and try something new. If you'd like more information on our Patreon and the things that you get access to, there's going to be a link in the description below.
If you guys like seeing us investigate some 5-minute craft videos and the similar, we can do that again. But for now, that's all. See you next time.